This 4-year-old beggar girl is humiliated for asking a reporter for help on live TV, but a millionaire saw everything and did this. Comment what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. Chapter 1. The morning sun, reflecting off the calm waters of the Charles River, couldn't soothe Brenda Johnson's nerves as she adjusted her microphone for the third time, annoyed by the breeze messing up her hair during the live broadcast of Good Morning Boston. The city skyline served as a perfect backdrop for another morning of local news, but the 32-year-old reporter was especially tense that day. Her ratings had been slipping in recent weeks, and she desperately needed something attention-grabbing. We're here in the historic North End, where centuries-old Italian traditions still thrive, she announced to the cameras, when a small figure shyly approached from behind her. Lily, barely 6 years old, wore a torn t-shirt and sneakers with holes that barely stayed on her tiny feet. Her hair was tangled and dirty, and her gaunt cheeks betrayed days without a proper meal. The girl stretched out a skinny hand towards the reporter, whispering softly, "Miss, can you help me? My mom's sick, and we don't have anywhere to sleep tonight." Her words were almost inaudible, but her presence was enough to make Brenda snap. "Get out of here, you dirty little pest!" the reporter shouted, pushing Lily so hard that the child fell on the uneven cobblestones of the sidewalk. "You're ruining my segment! Security, get this kid out of here!" The cameras captured everything. Lily's desperate cries as she tried to get up, her tears mixed with street dust, and especially the look of pure terror in the girl's eyes as she ran away, tripping over her own shaky legs. The brutal scene was broadcast live to thousands of homes across Massachusetts and quickly spread on social media like wildfire. Among the viewers was Richard Sterling, a 45-year-old man watching television in his secluded mansion in the Back Bay. When he saw that child being humiliated on live television, something inside him broke completely. For 3 years, ever since his wife Vivian had died in an accident he preferred not to remember, Richard had been living in a kind of emotional limbo, obsessively dedicating himself to the software company that had made him a millionaire, but never managing to fill the void that grew inside him each day. "Oh my God," he muttered, turning down the volume on the television and standing in front of the screen. The image of Lily falling on the ground haunted him in a way he couldn't explain. Maybe it was the absolute vulnerability of that child, or maybe it was the gratuitous cruelty of an adult who should have protected her. Whatever the reason, Richard knew he wouldn't be able to forget those frightened eyes. Within 20 minutes, he was driving his black BMW through the cobblestone streets of the North End, desperately looking for any sign of the girl. He asked shopkeepers, street vendors, and passers-by, describing Lily as best he could, but no one seemed to have seen where she had gone. Some looked at him suspiciously. A rich, well-dressed man looking for a street child was not exactly a common sight in Boston. It was almost noon when Richard finally gave up the search that first day. He returned home with a feeling of frustration he hadn't experienced in years. That night, he couldn't sleep thinking about Lily's desperate expression, and in the following days, his obsession with finding her only grew. Meanwhile, a few miles away, near the docks of South Boston, Maria, 28, held her adopted daughter in her arms, trying to calm her down after the day's trauma. They had hidden in a makeshift shelter made of tarpaulin and old wood among the shipping containers, away from the curious and judgmental eyes of society. "Mommy, why was that woman so mean to me?" Lily asked between sobs, her voice still trembling from the shock. "I just wanted to ask for help." Maria didn't know how to explain to a 6-year-old that the world was sometimes cruel for no apparent reason. She herself had learned that lesson the hard way, and now she saw her beloved daughter discovering the same bitter truth. "Sometimes people are angry about things that have nothing to do with us, honey," she said, kissing Lily's hot forehead. "But you didn't do anything wrong." In the following days, the story of Lily's humiliation gained traction on social media, but that only worsened the family's situation. Maria knew that they were now recognized on the streets, and that would make it even harder to find work or help. She made the painful decision to move even farther away, hiding in places where no one could find them. What she didn't imagine was that a rich and determined man had made the search for them his new obsession, and that he wouldn't rest until he found that girl who had touched his heart in a way he didn't fully understand. Richard Sterling was known in Boston for his reserved personality and unwavering determination in business, but now those traits were turning towards a much more personal and desperate goal. With each day that passed without news of Lily, something inside him became more determined and at the same time more desperate. He didn't yet know that that search would change not only his life, but also reveal secrets about the city itself that would leave him shocked by the human cruelty people were capable of. Chapter 2. 3 weeks had passed since the incident, and Richard couldn't get the image of Lily out of his mind. His employees at the software company began to notice his distraction during meetings, and he himself realized that he was losing focus on the business that had once consumed all his thoughts. It was as if that child had awakened something dormant inside him, a need for purpose that went beyond profit and corporate growth. On Thursday morning, Richard decided to hire a private investigator to help him in the search. Mark Olson was an experienced man, a former cop who knew the streets of Boston well and had contacts in every corner of the city. When Richard explained what he wanted, Mark looked at him with a skeptical expression. "Mr. Sterling, with all due respect, but finding a specific street child in this city is like looking for a needle in a haystack," Mark said, scratching his graying beard. "They move constantly, they hide, and they often don't even have real names. Why don't you just help a charity for needy children?" "It's not just any child," Richard replied firmly. "It's her, specifically her, and I'll pay whatever it takes to find her." Mark accepted the job, more out of curiosity about the businessman's motivations than for the amount offered. He had seen many rich men with strange whims, but there was something different about Richard's determination that intrigued him. Meanwhile, near the docks in South Boston, Maria and Lily's situation was rapidly deteriorating. The girl had developed a persistent cough that kept her awake during the damp nights, and small red spots began to appear on her arms. Maria knew she needed to seek medical help, but she had no money or proper documents to take Lily to a public hospital. "Mummy, my chest hurts when I breathe," Lily said one morning, her voice hoarse and weak. She was sitting on a piece of tarpaulin that served as a bed, hugging a raggedy doll that was her only toy. Maria felt her heart clench. During the 2 years she had been taking care of Lily, she had always managed to get by, to find a way to survive. But now, seeing her daughter sick and knowing she had no resources to help her, she felt completely helpless. "We'll figure something out, honey," she lied, trying to sound confident. "Mummy always figures things out." She decided to risk leaving the shelter to look for work. She left Lily hidden among the shipping containers, with water and some crackers she had gotten from a bakery that threw away day-old bread. She promised to be back before nightfall. Maria walked to the waterfront, where the hotels and inns always needed temporary cleaners. At the Seaport Inn, a modest establishment frequented by tourists looking for local attractions, she managed to talk to Mrs. Davis, the cleaning supervisor. "Do you have experience?" Mrs. Davis asked, observing Maria's worn clothes. "Yes, ma'am. I worked in hotels in Providence before I came here," Maria partially lied. She really had worked with cleaning, but never in big hotels. "And do you have children?" The question hit Maria like a punch in the stomach. She knew that having a small daughter would drastically reduce her chances of getting the job, especially a sick daughter who needed constant care. "No," she said, feeling each word burn in her throat. "I don't have children." Mrs. Davis hired her to start the next day. It would be a part-time job, but the money would be enough to buy medicine for Lily and maybe get a more decent place to live. That same afternoon, Mark had gotten his first real lead. A hot dog vendor on the common had remembered seeing a young woman with a small child begging near the downtown crossing a few days after the television incident. The description matched Lily and a possible mother or guardian. Mark took the information to Richard, who immediately wanted to go to the downtown crossing to look for them. "Mr. Sterling, maybe it's better if I go alone first," the investigator suggested. "A man in a suit in downtown crossing might attract too much attention and scare them away." But Richard was too impatient to wait. He changed the suit for casual clothes and headed to downtown crossing, a colorful and noisy place where street performers entertained and vendors offered local treats. He discreetly asked several vendors, showing a printed photo from the video he had managed to capture from the broadcast. "Oh yeah, I saw that girl," said a woman who sold souvenirs. "She was with a young lady, very thin, but they haven't been around here for a few days." Richard's heart raced. He was on the right track, but where could they be now? Meanwhile, Maria returned to the docks with a mixture of relief and guilt. She had gotten a job, but she had denied the existence of her own daughter to get it. When she arrived at the shelter, she found Lily sleeping, but her breathing was heavier than in the morning. "Lily, honey, how are you feeling?" she asked, touching the girl's forehead and feeling that it was too hot. "Mommy, I dreamed that you didn't come back," Lily murmured, opening her big, frightened eyes, "and that I was all alone here forever." Maria hugged her daughter tightly, feeling tears burn her eyes. "I'll never leave you alone. Never. I got a job today, and soon we'll have money to take you to a doctor." But as she cradled Lily to sleep again, Maria knew that she had started a lie that would be difficult to sustain. How would she work at the hotel every day and at the same time take care of a sick child? And if they found out about Lily, she would lose her job immediately. The next morning, she made a decision that would haunt her for months to come. She left Lily alone near the docks while she went to work, promising to be back at lunchtime. It was a desperate choice, but it seemed to be the only option she had. What Maria didn't know was that Richard and Mark were getting closer and closer to finding them, and that her lie about not having children would soon become the least of her problems when the truth about her family began to reveal itself in ways she never imagined. Chapter 3. 3 weeks after Maria's first day of work at the Seaport Inn, Richard finally had the confirmation he had been looking for. Mark had obtained accurate information. A new cleaning lady at the hotel corresponded exactly to the description of the woman who was with Lily on the day of the humiliation. Richard's heart leaped when he received the call. "I'm sure it's her, Mr. Sterling," Mark said on the phone. "Maria Santos, 28 years old, started working at the hotel 3 weeks ago. The physical description matches perfectly." Richard didn't waste any time. The next morning, he was parked discreetly in front of the Seaport Inn, watching the movement of employees. At 7 o'clock sharp, he saw Maria arrive hurriedly, wearing a simple cleaning uniform. Even with the different clothes and her hair tied back, he immediately recognized her from the images he had seen in the video. He waited until noon, when she went out for lunch, and approached her carefully. "Excuse me," he said, keeping his distance so as not to scare her. "Are you Maria Santos?" Maria turned around, immediately tense at seeing a well-dressed man addressing her. "Who wants to know?" she replied, instinctively taking a step back. "My name is Richard Sterling. I saw what happened to your daughter on television a few weeks ago, the girl who was pushed by the reporter." Maria's face paled instantly. "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have a daughter. Please, I just want to help," Richard insisted, noticing the panic in her eyes. "I saw the cruelty you suffered, and I want to offer support. I have resources, and I can—" "I told you I don't have a daughter," Maria shouted, attracting the attention of some passers-by. "You're confusing people. Leave me alone." Before Richard could respond, Maria ran back inside the hotel, leaving him standing on the sidewalk, completely confused. He was absolutely sure it was the same woman, but why would she so vehemently deny having a daughter? Inside the hotel, Maria locked herself in the employee bathroom, trembling with fear and anxiety. Her worst fears were being confirmed. Someone had found her, and even worse, it was a rich man who claimed to want to help. She knew rich men who offered help very well. Her stepfather had been one of them, and the price of his generosity had been the destruction of her childhood. "Maria, are you okay?" "Are you okay, Maria?" Mrs. Davis asked, knocking on the door. "I saw you running in here. Did something happen?" "It was nothing, Mrs. Davis. Just a misunderstanding on the street," Maria lied, trying to control her voice. That afternoon, when she returned near the docks, she found Lily much worse. The girl had a high fever, and the spots on her skin had spread to her neck and face. Her cough was constant now, and she could barely stand. "Mommy, I don't feel good," Lily murmured, lying on the damp tarpaulin that served as a bed. Maria touched her daughter's forehead and despaired at feeling the intense heat. She needed to do something, but the money she had earned at work was barely enough to buy food. Medicine was out of the question, and taking Lily to a hospital would mean having to explain why a child was living near the docks. The next morning, Richard returned to the hotel. But this time he went straight to the management. He made up a story about looking for distant relatives and managed to confirm that Maria actually worked there. The manager, Mr. Harrison, was sympathetic but discreet. "She's a dedicated employee," he said. "Always punctual, works well, but she's very reserved. She doesn't talk about her personal life with anyone." "Did she mention anything about family?" "Children?" Richard asked, trying to sound casual. "As far as I know, she lives alone. In fact, it was one of the things that weighed in the hiring. No family to worry about. She can work flexible hours." The information left Richard even more confused. Why was Maria lying at work about having a daughter? And why was she denying it to him too? He began to question his own memory. Had he really seen what he thought he had seen? Meanwhile, Lily's situation became critical. On Wednesday of that week, she fainted while Maria was at work, remaining unconscious for almost an hour. When Maria returned for lunch and found her daughter unconscious, she panicked completely. "Lily, honey, wake up," she shouted, gently shaking the girl. "Please wake up." Lily opened her eyes slowly, but was clearly very weak. "Mummy, I had a strange dream. There was a handsome man who wanted to help me, but you were afraid of him." The daughter's words hit Maria like lightning. Lily was delirious from the fever, but her words echoed exactly the real situation. Was she being selfish in refusing help? Was her fear of the past preventing her daughter from receiving the care she needed? That afternoon, Richard decided to try a different approach. Instead of contacting Maria directly, he hired Mark to discreetly investigate her life. What they discovered in the following days would completely change Richard's perspective on the whole situation. Mark discovered that Maria had no fixed address registered anywhere in the city. There were no utility bills or any services in her name. It was as if she were a ghost living on the margins of society. Even more intriguing, there were no records of her having sought medical help for a child in any hospital or clinic in the area. "This is very strange, Mr. Sterling," Mark said during a meeting at the company office. "Either this woman is hiding something very serious or what?" Richard asked, impatient. "Or she really doesn't have a daughter and we're following the wrong person." The possibility hit Richard like a punch in the gut. What if he was obsessed with a woman who wasn't even the mother of the child he wanted to help? What if Lily was somewhere else completely, perhaps suffering even more? But Richard couldn't accept that hypothesis. His intuition screamed that he was on the right track, that Maria was lying for some reason he still didn't understand. He decided to give it one more chance and develop a different plan to address the situation. What he didn't know was that, At that very moment, near the docks of South Boston, Lily was having the most severe respiratory crisis since they had arrived there, and that Maria was about to make a desperate decision that would change everything forever. Chapter 4. On Friday of that week, Maria made the most difficult decision of her life. Lily had spent the whole night coughing up blood, and in the morning she could barely open her eyes. The fever was so high that the girl was delirious, calling out to people who didn't exist and talking nonsense. Maria knew that if she didn't do something immediately, she would lose the daughter she had promised to protect. With a broken heart, she picked up Lily and walked to the city centre. She knew a place where abandoned children were left discreetly, a small, makeshift shelter behind St. Patrick's Cathedral, run by local volunteers. It wasn't official, but it was safe, and perhaps someone there could give Lily the medical care she couldn't provide. "Mommy, where are we going?" Lily murmured, her weak little voice echoing against Maria's chest. "We're going to find people who can help you get better, honey," Maria said, each word cutting her soul like a blade. "Mommy will come back to pick you up as soon as I get enough money to cure you properly." The shelter was run by Thomas Riley, a 52-year-old man known in the community for his social work. When Maria appeared with Lily in her arms, he immediately offered to help, but asked questions she couldn't answer truthfully. "What's the child's full name? Do you have any documents? Who are the parents?" Thomas asked, observing Lily's weakened state. Her name is Lily. I don't have the documents with me now, but I can bring them later," Maria lied, knowing that she had never provided official documentation for the girl. "I'm her mother, but I'm going through financial difficulties." Thomas agreed to take care of Lily temporarily, but made it clear that he would need more information soon. Maria kissed her daughter's hot forehead one last time before leaving, promising to be back soon. Lily tried to cling to her mother, but she was too weak to resist. "Don't leave me here, Mommy," she cried. "I promise I'll get better on my own." "You'll get better much faster here, with people who know how to take care of sick children," Maria said, forcing a smile through her tears. "Mommy will come back tomorrow to see you." But Maria didn't come back the next day, or the day after. The work at the hotel was consuming all her time. Mrs. Davis had increased her hours, and she couldn't refuse if she wanted to save enough money to get Lily out of there and take care of her properly. At the shelter, Lily cried every night, asking the volunteers when her mother would return. Thomas began to get irritated with the situation. The shelter was overcrowded, and a sick child without documentation was creating bureaucratic problems he preferred to avoid. "That mother isn't coming back," he said to his assistant Jane. "It's always like this. They leave the kids here and disappear. We're going to have to decide what to do with the girl." Meanwhile, Richard had hired another investigator to work with Mark. His obsession with finding Lily was affecting his business. He had missed 2 important meetings, and his secretary was beginning to worry about his mental state. But he couldn't stop. It was as if his life depended on finding that child. It was during one of these investigations that Mark made a disturbing discovery. Talking to merchants in the area, he learned that there were rumors about the shelter at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Some people whispered that not every donation actually reached the children, and that Thomas Riley had a lifestyle incompatible with the salary of a volunteer social worker. "Mr. Sterling, I think we found something important," Mark said in an urgent call. "The girl may be in that shelter, but there are serious problems with the administration of the place." Richard didn't hesitate. On the same day, he went to St. Patrick's Cathedral, posing as a potential donor interested in learning about the social work. Thomas greeted him with obvious enthusiasm. A wealthy businessman was always welcome. "Our work here is fundamental to the community," Thomas said, leading Richard through the corridors of the shelter. "We take care of abandoned children, offer shelter and basic education." That's when Richard saw her. At the back of one of the rooms, a small girl was sitting alone on a bed, drawing with crayons on pieces of paper. Even sick and thinner than before, he recognized her immediately. It was Lily. "Who is that girl?" Richard asked, trying to control the emotion in his voice. "Ah, that's complicated," Thomas said, visibly uncomfortable. "The mother left her here a week ago, said she'd be back, but she hasn't shown up yet. No documents, no complete family information. It's a problematic case." Richard approached the room, and when Lily looked up, he saw the same frightened look from the day of the humiliation on television. The girl was clearly better than before. Someone had taken care of her health, but there was a deep sadness in her eyes that broke him. "Hi," he said softly, crouching down to her level. "How are you feeling?" Lily studied him for a moment before answering. "You look like the man from my dream, the one who wanted to help, but my mommy was afraid." Her words confirmed all of Richard's suspicions. Maria really was Lily's mother, and for some reason was hiding it from everyone. But why? And why had she abandoned her daughter in that place? "Has your mother visited you?" he asked. "She said she'd come back, but it's been many days," Lily replied, her eyes filling with tears. "I think she forgot about me." That night, Richard couldn't sleep. He had found Lily, but the situation was more complicated than he had imagined. The girl was being cared for, but in a place he suspected was corrupt. The mother had disappeared, denying having a daughter to him, but clearly existing in the child's life. Now what? How could he help without fully understanding what was going on? At the hotel, Maria worked late, cleaning rooms and saving every penny she could. She had managed to get a loan from a local loan shark to pay for private medical treatment for Lily as soon as she gathered the courage to pick her up from the shelter. But with each day that passed, it became more difficult to face what she had done. "Just one more week," she murmured to herself as she scrubbed the floor of an empty hallway. "One more week, and I'll have enough money to get her out of there and take care of her properly." What she didn't know was that Richard had found Lily and was planning a way to help that would change the lives of everyone involved in ways that none of them could imagine. Chapter 5. On the following Monday, Richard put a risky plan into action. He returned to the shelter at St. Patrick's Cathedral, this time with a concrete proposal for Thomas. He offered to pay for Lily's medical treatments in exchange for becoming her official godfather. It was a partial lie. He wanted much more than just paying for treatments, but he knew he needed to proceed with caution. "Mr. Riley, I was very touched by that girl's situation," Richard said, sitting in Thomas's makeshift office. "I'd like to help with her medical costs. I can pay for private consultations, medication, everything that's needed." Thomas's eyes lit up with obvious interest. "It's a very generous proposal, Mr. Sterling, but I need to warn you that the girl's situation is complicated. The mother disappeared. We don't have complete documentation." "That's not a problem for me," Richard replied. "I just want to help a child who clearly needs it. I'm not looking for anything in return, just the satisfaction of doing good." Thomas accepted immediately, seeing an opportunity for personal profit. He knew he could inflate the treatment costs and pocket the difference, a practice he already used with other donations. That same afternoon, Richard took Lily to a private medical consultation with Dr. Evans, a renowned pediatrician in Boston. The girl was nervous and confused about why a stranger was taking care of her, but Richard was gentle and patient. "Why are you helping me?" Lily asked during the car ride to the clinic. "Because every child deserves to be cared for and loved," Richard replied, looking at her in the rearview mirror. "And because I saw on television when that bad woman was cruel to you." "The woman on television was my mommy's cousin," Lily said innocently, a piece of information that hit Richard like lightning. "Your mommy's cousin?" he asked, trying not to show his shock. "Yeah, Mommy was very angry afterward. She said that Cousin Brenda has always been bad since they were little." The revelation changed everything. Brenda, the reporter who had humiliated Lily, knew the girl and her mother personally. The cruelty hadn't been just an impulsive act of a stressed journalist. It had been something personal, premeditated. Dr. Evans examined Lily carefully, and was concerned about what he found. "This child has gone through a period of severe malnutrition and medical neglect," he said to Richard in private. "The spots on her skin are the result of an infection that could have been serious if it hadn't been treated. She'll need regular medical follow-up and a specific nutritious diet." "How much will it cost?" Richard asked. "It depends. If it's just basic consultations and medication, a few $100s a month. But if we include more detailed exams and possible psychological counseling—" Dr. Evans paused, observing Richard. "May I ask what your relationship with the child is?" "I'm helping through a local shelter," Richard said, avoiding going into details. "Her mother is going through difficulties." Meanwhile, at the Seaport Inn, Maria had finally gathered the courage to ask Mrs. Davis for a day off. She had worked 2 weeks straight without rest, saving every penny, and now she had enough money to pick up Lily and take her to a private doctor. "I need to resolve an urgent personal matter," she told the supervisor. "That's fine, Maria. You've been an exemplary employee. You can take the day," replied Mrs. Davis, who had really been impressed by the new hire's dedication. Maria walked to St. Patrick's Cathedral with her heart racing, mentally rehearsing how she would explain her absence to Lily. When she arrived at the shelter, she was greeted by Jane, Thomas's assistant. "I've come to pick up my daughter Lily," Maria said, trying to sound confident. "Oh, you're her mother," Jane said in a tone Maria couldn't decipher. "Thomas is in a meeting right now, but he'll want to talk to you." "You? Can I see my daughter first? She must be worried." "Actually, she's not here right now. She went out for a medical appointment." Maria's blood ran cold. "Medical appointment? With whom? I didn't authorize any appointment." "With her godfather. A very kind gentleman who offered to pay for the girl's medical treatment," Jane explained, without noticing the growing panic on Maria's face. "What godfather? What man?" Maria began to tremble. Her worst nightmares were coming true. An unknown man had taken her daughter, and the shelter had allowed it without her authorization. Calm down," Jane said, noticing Maria's despair. "It's all official. Thomas has all the documentation. Mr. Sterling is a respected businessman who offered to help." Sterling. The name echoed in Maria's mind like an alarm. It was the same man who had approached her at the hotel, the one who claimed to have seen Lily on television. He had found her daughter and was now doing exactly what she feared most, getting involved in their lives in a way she couldn't control. "Where did they go? When will they be back?" Maria asked, her voice rising in tone. "I don't know exactly. Thomas has that information, but he's in an important meeting and can't be interrupted." Maria ran out of the shelter, not knowing where to go or what to do. She walked through the streets of Boston like a desperate woman, imagining terrible scenarios about what might be happening to Lily. All her childhood traumas came back in full force. Rich men who helped, who offered good things in exchange for silence about bad things. When Richard returned to the shelter with Lily 2 hours later, he found Thomas visibly nervous. "Did something happen?" Richard asked. "The girl's mother showed up," Thomas said. "She was very agitated, shouting, making accusations. She said she'd be back with the police." Lily, who had relaxed during the outing and medical appointment, immediately became tense upon hearing about her mother. "My mommy was here? Where is she now?" "She had to leave, but she'll be back soon," Thomas lied, not wanting to deal with an emotional crisis of the child in front of Richard. But Lily knew her mother too well to believe that explanation. She began to cry, asking for Maria, and neither Richard nor Thomas could console her. "I want my mommy," she sobbed. "Why did she leave again? What did I do wrong?" Richard felt his heart break, seeing the girl's despair. He was trying to help, but each action of his seemed to create more complications. He needed to find Maria and talk to her properly, make her understand that his intentions were genuine. That night, Maria didn't return to the hotel or to the shelter. She was hiding in a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city, planning an escape that would save Lily from what she believed was a terrible danger. What she didn't know was that her next decision would put both her and Lily in an even more dangerous and desperate situation. Chapter 6. In the early hours of Tuesday, Maria returned to the shelter like a shadow. She had waited until she was sure everyone was asleep to execute her desperate plan, to take Lily and flee Boston forever. She knew the back of the church building because she had grown up in the area, and she knew exactly where the room was where she had left her daughter. She silently climbed the window on the ground floor and found Lily sleeping in one of the beds. The girl was visibly better, her cheeks had more color, and she wasn't coughing as much as before. For a moment Maria hesitated. Maybe Lily was really receiving the care she hadn't been able to provide. "Lily," she whispered, gently shaking her daughter. "Wake up, honey. We have to go." Lily opened her eyes, and upon seeing her mother, her face lit up with joy. "Mommy, you came back. I knew you hadn't forgotten me." "I'd never forget you," Maria said, hugging her daughter tightly. "We're getting out of here. I got some money, and we're going to a place where no one can find us." They left the same way Maria had entered, through the back window. They walked to South Station, where Maria bought 2 bus tickets to Portland, Maine, a neighboring state where she had heard that a seafood processing plant was hiring. It was hard work, but it paid better than the hotel, and most importantly, it was far away from anyone who knew their story. The next morning, when Thomas discovered that Lily had disappeared, he panicked completely. Besides losing the source of income that Richard represented, he knew he would have to explain how a child had simply vanished during the night without anyone noticing. He immediately called Richard. "Mr. Sterling, we have a serious problem. The girl, she disappeared during the night." "What do you mean, disappeared?" Richard shouted, feeling his world crumbling again. "It must have been the mother. She was very agitated yesterday, talking about calling the police. She must have come back and taken her daughter in secret." Richard arrived at the shelter in 15 minutes, furious and desperate. "How could you allow this? Where are the security guards? How does a child disappear from a shelter during the night?" "Mr. Sterling, you need to understand." Thomas tried to justify himself. "We're not an official institution. We don't have a security structure. When biological parents decide to take their children—" "You had a responsibility. I was paying for medical care, proper treatment." Richard's voice echoed through the empty corridors of the shelter. Jane approached, clearly embarrassed. "Mr. Sterling, there's something you need to know. Yesterday, when Lily's mother was here, she said strange things about rich men who hurt children. She seemed terrified, not just angry." The information hit Richard like a punch to the stomach. Maria wasn't just being difficult or proud. She was genuinely afraid of him. But why? What had happened in her life to create so much terror of men who offered help? In Portland, Maria got a job at the Bay Breeze seafood processing plant on the same day she arrived. The supervisor, Mr. Johnson, was desperate for employees willing to work 12-hour shifts. "We pay by productivity," he explained. "The more seafood you process, the more you earn. The work is hard, but for those who need quick money, it's a good opportunity." Maria accepted immediately, even though it meant leaving Lily alone for 12 hours a day. She rented a small room in the back of a cheap boarding house, a small and stuffy space with only 1 bed, an old stove, and a shared bathroom in the hallway. "Mommy, this place is very small," Lily said, looking around the damp room. "It's temporary, honey," Maria lied. "Soon we'll get a better place. I just need to work hard first." In the first few days, the routine seemed to work. Maria left at 5 in the morning, left prepared food for Lily, and returned at 7 in the evening. The girl stayed locked in the room, with strict orders not to open the door to anyone and not to make noise that could bother the neighbors. But Lily, who was already recovering from her health problems, soon began to feel like a prisoner. The room had no proper windows. There was nothing to do, and the hours dragged on eternally. She began to draw on the walls with pieces of charcoal she found in the backyard of the boarding house, creating figures of birds and flowers that reminded her of better days. At the plant, Maria worked like a woman possessed. Her hands soon became cut by the shells of the seafood, but she didn't stop. Every extra penny meant a better chance of giving Lily the life she deserved. But the work was brutal, and she returned home too exhausted to give her daughter the attention she needed. "Mummy, can you play with me today?" Lily asked one Friday night. "I'm very tired, honey," Maria replied, throwing herself on the bed still with her dirty plant clothes on. "Tomorrow, I promise." But tomorrow never came. On the weekend, Maria needed to do laundry, buy food, and also do extra work that some colleagues offered to supplement her income. Lily was becoming increasingly isolated and sad. Meanwhile, in Boston, Richard had hired an entire team of investigators to find Maria and Lily. Mark had discovered that they bought tickets to Portland, and now they were scouring the neighboring city for clues. "We found records of a woman named Maria Santos, who checked into a boarding house called The Haven," Mark reported in a call, "and there's a seafood plant in the area that's hiring a lot of new employees." "I'm going there now," Richard said, grabbing his car keys. "Mr. Sterling, maybe it's better to think of a strategy first," Mark suggested. "If she ran away once, she'll run away again if she feels cornered." But Richard was beyond patience. 3 weeks had passed since Lily had disappeared from the shelter, and he couldn't sleep properly anymore, thinking about what might be happening to the girl. His duties at the company were being neglected, and he knew he needed to resolve that situation once and for all. In Portland, that same afternoon, the accident happened that would change everything. Maria was operating one of the seafood shelling machines when the safety guard failed. Her right hand was pulled into the mechanism, and she screamed in pain as the bones broke. Colleagues rushed to help her, turning off the machine and calling an ambulance. Maria was taken to the local hospital, where doctors discovered that in addition to the fractures, there was damage to the tendons that would require surgery and months of recovery. "Ms. Santos, you'll need to stay in the hospital for at least a week," explained Dr. Miller, the orthopedic surgeon, "and then you'll need physical therapy. You won't be able to work with that hand for quite a while." Despair took over Maria. Without being able to work, how would she pay for the boarding house room? How would she take care of Lily? And even worse, who was taking care of the girl at that moment? She had left for work in the morning, and now it was almost 10 at night. At the boarding house, Lily had been alone for more than 15 hours, hungry and scared. She had knocked on the door a few times, but no one answered. The strange noises of the night left her terrified, and she hid under the bed every time she heard footsteps in the hallway. It was in that moment of total despair that fate put Richard exactly in the right place to find them again, but in circumstances that would make the situation even more complicated than he had ever imagined. Chapter 7. On the morning after the accident, Richard arrived in Portland determined to find Maria and Lily. He went first to the Haven boarding house, where Mark had discovered that a woman named Maria Santos was staying. The owner, Mrs. Peterson, a 60-year-old woman, greeted him with suspicion. "I don't give information about my guests to strangers," she said, crossing her arms. "If you want to talk to someone, leave a message and I'll deliver it." Richard tried to explain that it was an urgent matter, but Mrs. Peterson was unyielding. It was then that he heard a sound that made his heart pound, the weak cry of a child coming from one of the rooms in the back of the boarding house. It was a muffled but unmistakable sound. "That crying, is it a child?" he asked, trying to identify where it was coming from. "It could be," Mrs. Peterson replied evasively. "I have several guests with families." Richard followed the sound and knocked gently on the door of the room from which the crying was coming. "Hello? Is anyone there? I'm looking for Lily." The crying stopped immediately. On the other side of the door, Lily had recognized the voice. It was the kind man who had taken her to the doctor, but her mother had told her not to open the door to anyone. "Lily, it's me, Richard. You remember me? I took you to see the doctor in Boston," he said softly. "Where's your mother?" "My mommy didn't come back," Lily replied with a choked voice. "She left yesterday morning and hasn't come back. I'm hungry and scared." Mrs. Peterson, who had followed Richard, became alarmed. "What do you mean she hasn't come back? That girl's mother always comes back at night. This isn't normal." "How long has the child been alone?" Richard asked, his concern growing. "Since yesterday morning. That means more than 20 hours, calculated Mrs. Peterson, now clearly worried too. Richard knew he needed to act. "Lily, I need you to open the door. We're going to find your mother, but first I need to make sure you're okay." After a few minutes of hesitation, Lily opened the door. When Richard saw her, he was shocked by her condition. The girl was thin again, with deep, dark circles under her eyes, and her clothes were dirty. The small room was stuffy and fetid, with food scraps scattered and charcoal drawings covering all the walls. "When was the last time you ate?" he asked, crouching down to her level. "Yesterday morning." "Mommy left cookies, but they're all gone," Lily replied, holding her stomach that was audibly rumbling. Richard turned to Mrs. Peterson. "We need to go to the hospitals in the city. If she hasn't come home, something might have happened." At St. Joseph's Municipal Hospital, they found Maria admitted to the orthopedics ward. When the nurse led them to her room, Richard saw a woman completely destroyed physically and emotionally. Her right hand was immobilized with a cast and splint, and her eyes were red from crying so much. "Lily!" Maria cried out upon seeing her daughter trying to sit up in bed despite the pain. "Honey, are you okay? Who brought you here?" "It was the nice man, Mommy," Lily said, running to hug Maria carefully. "He found me when you didn't come back." Maria looked at Richard with a mixture of gratitude and terror. "What do you want from us? Why do you keep following us?" "I want to help," Richard said simply. "Your daughter spent more than 20 hours alone, hungry and scared. You're hurt and can't work. You need help." "I don't need your help," Maria said, but her voice no longer had the firmness it had before. The physical and emotional pain had left her exhausted. Dr. Olson entered the room to do his morning consultation and was surprised to see visitors so early. "Ms. Santos, how are you feeling today?" "Doctor, when can I be discharged?" she asked anxiously. "Not yet. The surgery was more complicated than we expected. You'll have to stay for at least 3 more days, and then you'll need absolute rest for several weeks." The information devastated Maria. "But doctor, I need to work. I have a daughter to provide for her. With this injury, you won't be able to work with your hands for at least 2 months, Dr. Olson explained. "And even then, you'll never have the same strength in your right hand." Lily began to cry, sensing the desperation in her mother's voice. Richard approached the bed. "Maria, please let me help. I can pay for the hospital costs, arrange a better place for you to live, ensure Lily has food and medical care." "And in return for what?" Maria asked, her voice heavy with suspicion. "In return for nothing," Richard replied honestly. "Just the satisfaction of knowing that an innocent child isn't suffering." "Rich men never do anything for free," Maria said bitterly. "They always want something in return." Richard realized he needed a different approach. He left the room and called Mark. "I need you to investigate Maria Santos's past. There's something that makes her so afraid of wealthy men. I need to understand what happened to her." Meanwhile, Lily had fallen asleep in the chair next to her mother's bed, exhausted from the stress of the past few days. Maria watched her sleep, knowing she had an impossible decision ahead: accept help from a man who scared her, or watch her daughter suffer because of her pride and fear. "Mr. Sterling," she said when he returned to the room, "if you really want to help, I need to set some rules. You only pay for medical expenses and a place for us to live. No expensive gifts, no involvement in our personal lives, and Lily is never alone with you. Richard accepted immediately, although the conditions deeply frustrated him. He had developed a genuine affection for Lily and felt he could offer much more than just financial support. That afternoon, he rented a small but clean and safe apartment for Maria and Lily, paid all the hospital bills, and bought food and new clothes for the girl. But he kept his distance, respecting the limits that Maria had established. 3 days later, when Maria was discharged, she found the apartment that Richard had prepared and was conflicted. It was the nicest place she had lived since Lily came into her life. It had a separate room for the girl, a fully equipped kitchen, and even new toys scattered around the living room. "Mommy, look how beautiful!" exclaimed Lily, running through the apartment. "Can I play with these toys?" "You can, my little one," Maria said. But her heart was heavy. Each kindness from Richard made her feel more indebted, more vulnerable. That night, alone in the bedroom while Lily slept, Maria made a decision that would torment her for the next few months. She began selling some of the toys that Richard had bought to get extra money. It was her way of maintaining some control over the situation, but also a betrayal of the trust he had placed in her. What she didn't know was that Mark had uncovered information about her past that would explain her behavior, and that this revelation would completely change the way Richard viewed the entire situation. Chapter 8. A week after Maria and Lily settled into the apartment, Mark called Richard with information that would change his understanding of everything. They met at the Solar Energy Company office on a Monday morning, and Mark brought a folder full of documents and records he had managed to gather. "Mr. Sterling, what I discovered about Maria Santos explains a lot about her behavior," Mark began, opening the folder. "She grew up in Providence with her mother, Conceição Santos, and never knew her father. When she was 12, her mother married Ricardo Mendoza, an entrepreneur in the import business." "And what's wrong with that?" Richard asked. "Ricardo was rich, respected in society, but inside the house—" Mark paused, consulting his notes. "There are records of at least 3 hospitalizations of Maria at St. Joseph's Municipal Hospital between the ages of 12 and 15, always with injuries that doctors considered suspicious, but that she claimed were household accidents." Richard's stomach turned. "Are you saying her stepfather abused her?" "The evidence points to that. And there's more," Mark continued. "When Maria turned 16, she ran away from home. She lived on the streets for 2 years before gaining stability working as a domestic. Her mother chose to stay with Ricardo and never spoke to her daughter again." Now Richard understood Maria's terror when he offered to help. In her mind, he represented the same type of man who had destroyed her childhood, rich, powerful, offering good things that always came with a terrible price. "There's something else you need to know," Mark said. "I found out how Lily entered Maria's life, and it's not what we expected." "What do you mean?" "Lily is not Maria's biological daughter," Mark revealed, showing hospital documents. 2 years ago, Maria found the girl abandoned in a park in Providence. Lily was only 4 years old, sick and barely able to speak. Maria took her home and cared for her as if she were her own daughter. The revelation hit Richard like a lightning bolt. "So Maria adopted Lily informally?" "Exactly. There was never a legal process, no official documentation. Maria simply took responsibility for the child. That's why she's so afraid someone will find out. Technically, Lily isn't legally her daughter." Meanwhile, in the apartment Richard had rented, Maria and Lily's routine was slowly settling in. Maria was doing physical therapy to regain movement in her hand, but progress was slow and painful. She felt useless, dependent on the generosity of a man she couldn't fully trust. "Mommy, why do you get sad when Uncle Richard comes to visit us?" Lily asked one afternoon, while playing with some of the few toys Maria hadn't sold. "I don't get sad, my little one," Maria lied. "It's just that it's complicated to accept help from other people. But he's nice. He took me to the doctor and bought medicine when I was sick." Maria sighed. People aren't always what they seem, Lily. Sometimes nice men at first can become bad people later. Like the man who hurt you when you were little? Lily asked innocently. The question caught Maria off guard. She had never told Lily details about her past, but the girl was more perceptive than she imagined. How do you know about that? Sometimes you talk in your sleep, Lily explained, and you always get scared when rich men talk to you. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was Richard, making his weekly visit to check on them. Maria always tensed during these visits, keeping her distance and answering only what was necessary to his questions. "How's the physical therapy going?" he asked, observing Maria's still bandaged hand. "Improving slowly," she replied dryly. "And you, Lily, how's school?" Richard had enrolled the girl in a local school, something Maria had reluctantly accepted. "I'm learning to write my name," Lily said excitedly, running to get a notebook. "Want to see?" While Lily showed her progress at school, Maria watched the interaction between her and Richard. It was impossible to deny that he was genuinely affectionate with the girl, and that Lily had blossomed under his care. But fear still dominated her heart. "Maria," Richard said when Lily went to play in the room, "can I ask you something? Why are you so afraid of me? Have I done something that made you uncomfortable?" Maria was silent for a long moment. "You haven't done anything specific. It's just that I learned that men like you always want something in return for their generosity. Men like me? Rich, powerful, men who think money gives them rights over other people." Richard felt his guilt increase. "Maria, I know about your stepfather. I know what he did to you when you were a child." Maria's face paled. "How do you know about that?" "I investigated your past because I needed to understand why you were so afraid. Not to use it against you, but to help you better." "You had no right," Maria exploded, getting up from the chair. "My private life is none of your business." "You're right," Richard admitted, "but you need to understand that I'm not him. I'm not Ricardo. I don't want to hurt you or Lily." "That's exactly what he said at the beginning," Maria said bitterly. "That he just wanted to help our family, that we were special to him." At that moment, Lily ran back from the room, noticing the tension between the adults. "Why are you fighting?" "We're not fighting, my little one," Maria said quickly, forcing a smile. "Uncle Richard, can you stay for dinner?" Lily asked, ignoring the obvious tension. Richard looked at Maria, who clearly didn't want him to stay. "Maybe another day, Lily. Your mother needs to rest." After he left, Maria sat on the couch and began to cry. Lily approached and hugged her mother. "Mommy, Uncle Richard is different from the bad men," she said. "I can feel it. He has sad eyes, like yours. But he doesn't have bad eyes, like you taught me to recognize." The daughter's words touched Maria deeply. Maybe she was being unfair to Richard, letting past traumas prevent Lily from having a chance at happiness. That night, while Lily slept, Maria made a decision that would change the course of their lives. She picked up the phone and called Richard. "Richard, it's me, Maria. Can we talk tomorrow? There are things I need to tell you about Lily, about how she really came into my life." On the other end of the line, Richard felt his heart race. "Of course, Maria. I'll be there whenever you want." And Richard, "Thank you for everything. I know I haven't been fair to you." When she hung up, Maria had no idea that her decision to tell the truth about Lily would trigger a series of events that would reveal much deeper secrets about the girl's own origins, and that would put the whole family they were building in danger. Chapter 9. The next morning, Maria brewed extra strong coffee and sent Lily to play in the building's backyard while she waited for Richard to arrive. Her hands trembled slightly, not only from physical therapy, but from the anxiety of finally telling the whole truth. When he knocked on the door, she took a deep breath and greeted him with a more open expression than he had seen in months. "Thank you for coming," she said, indicating a chair at the kitchen table. "There are important things I need to tell you about Lily, about me, about how we got here." Richard sat down, realizing that something fundamental was about to change. "I'm listening." "First, I want to apologize," Maria began, avoiding eye contact. "You've been nothing but kind to us, and I've treated you like a monster. My fears don't justify that." "Maria, considering your past, your reaction was understandable." "It wasn't just understandable," she said, finally looking at him. "It was unfair, and mainly unfair to Lily, who deserves to have good people in her life." Maria paused, picking up a cup of coffee with still, trembling hands. "Lily isn't my biological daughter. I imagine you already know that from your investigations." Richard nodded. "Mark discovered it. You found her abandoned." "It was 2 years and 3 months ago," Maria began, her voice getting firmer as she continued. "I was working as a night cleaner in a commercial building in Providence. It was winter, it was very cold, and when I left work at 6 in the morning, I saw a child sleeping on a bench in Kennedy Plaza. Alone. Completely alone. She was wearing only a t-shirt and a dirty diaper. She must have been about 4 years old, but she was so malnourished that she looked smaller. I thought her parents were nearby, so I waited." Maria paused, remembering the scene. "I waited 2 hours. No one showed up. And you took her home?" "Not immediately. First I tried to take her to the police, but it was Sunday morning and there was no one at the juvenile precinct. I took her to have coffee at a nearby bakery, and that's when I realized she could barely speak." Maria got up and walked to the window, watching Lily play down below. She only knew a few basic words. Mommy. Water. No. She was scared of everything and everyone. When I tried to ask her name, she just cried. "How did you find out her name was Lily?" "I didn't find out. I gave her that name," Maria revealed. "In the first few days, she didn't respond to any name I tried. It was as if she didn't know she had a name. I called her Lily because her blue eyes reminded me of the flower." Richard felt a pang in his heart. A child so small, so abandoned that she didn't even know her own name. "I took her to the hospital on the second day," Maria continued. "She had pneumonia, severe malnutrition, and there were marks on her body that indicated that someone had hurt her before abandoning her." "My God," Richard murmured. "The doctors asked all the questions I expected. Who were the parents? Where did she live? If I had notified the authorities." "I lied," Maria admitted, returning to sit down. "I said she was my niece, that I was taking care of her temporarily while her sister resolved personal problems." "Why did you lie?" "Because I saw how she reacted when they talked about separating her from me. In the 3 days we were together, she had started to trust only me. The idea of putting her in a shelter where she could suffer more, I couldn't do it." Richard was beginning to understand the depth of the bond between Maria and Lily. It wasn't just maternal love. It was the connection between two souls who had been hurt by the world and found healing in each other. "The first few months were very difficult," Maria said. "Lily had nightmares every night, hid whenever she heard male voices, and it took almost 6 months for her to start calling me Mom. But she was healing, learning to trust again." "And you never tried to find out who the real parents were?" "I tried at first. I looked in hospitals, orphanages, put up posters around the city, but after a few months I realized I didn't want to find them anymore," Maria confessed. "Anyone who abandons a 4-year-old child sick in a park, that person doesn't deserve to be called a father or mother." At that moment, Lily ran up the stairs and knocked on the door. "Mommy, can I come in? I found a pretty butterfly." "You can come in, my little one," Maria said. Lily entered excitedly, but stopped when she saw the serious expression of the adults. "Are you talking about important things again?" "We are," Richard said, smiling at her. "Your mother was telling me how you met each other." "Oh, that," Lily said naturally. "I was lost and sad, and Mommy found me. She taught me my name and gave me a family." The simplicity with which Lily described her own history touched Richard deeply. To her, it didn't matter who her biological parents were. Maria was her mother because she had chosen to love her when no one else did. "Lily, can you give me a few more minutes with your mum?" Richard asked. "Then we can see your butterfly." When Lily left, Maria continued, "There's something else you need to know. When we left Providence and came to Boston, it was because I discovered something about Lily's past that scared me." "What did you discover?" "A social worker from Providence contacted me 6 months after I found Lily. She said there was an investigation into a missing child who could be her, a girl who had been taken from an abusive family but who escaped the temporary shelter before being relocated." Richard leaned forward. "Lily had escaped from a shelter?" "Apparently, yes. The social worker showed me photos, and it was definitely her. She said the biological parents were in jail for abuse, and that Lily had disappeared on the night she was to be transferred to a foster family." "And you didn't turn her over to the authorities?" "The social worker told me that if I was taking good care of the child, they could not have found her," Maria said, making air quotes with her fingers. "She saw that Lily was healthy, happy, and said that sometimes it was better to leave things as they were." "So you came to Boston to hide? To start a new life, away from anyone who could question our family," Maria confirmed. "It was working until the incident with Brenda on television," Richard completed. "Exactly. And then you appeared, wanting to help us, and all my fears came back. I thought you might find out the truth and try to take Lily away from me." Richard was silent for a few minutes, processing everything he had heard. Finally, he spoke. "Maria, you saved this girl. You gave her love, care, a family. None of that changes because you're not her biological mother. But legally we can resolve it. I can help with the official adoption process if you want." Maria began to cry, not from sadness but from relief. "You would do that? Even knowing that I lied to you for all these months? Maria, you protected your daughter the only way you knew how. I'm not going to judge you for that." At that moment, Lily ran back, carefully holding a blue butterfly in her cupped hands. "Look, it's the color of my eyes." Richard and Maria smiled, but both knew that despite this moment of harmony, there were still challenges ahead. What none of them imagined was that the revelation about Lily's past was about to attract the attention of people who preferred that certain truths remained buried forever. Chapter 10. 2 weeks after the revealing conversation between Maria and Richard, the small family's life had found a more harmonious rhythm. Maria was recovering well from the surgery and had begun to genuinely trust Richard, allowing him to spend more time with Lily. The girl blossomed with this new dynamic, finally having 2 stable parental figures in her life. It was on a Thursday morning that everything changed again. Richard was in his office when he received an unexpected call from a woman who identified herself as Stella Cardoso, a social worker from Boston. "Mr. Sterling, I need to talk to you about a delicate situation involving the minor Lily Santos," Stella said, her voice professional, but laced with concern. "Who gave you my name?" Richard asked, immediately alert. "I received information that you have been assisting the child and her legal guardian. I need to clarify some points about the minor's documentation." Richard agreed to meet with Stella in his office that afternoon. When she arrived, she brought a bulky folder and an expression that mixed professional determination with personal compassion. Stella was a 38-year-old woman, brown hair pulled back in a practical bun, and eyes that betrayed years of experience dealing with difficult cases of children in vulnerable situations. There was something in her posture that suggested she herself carried deep scars. "Mr. Sterling, I'll be direct," she began, opening the folder. "I received an anonymous tip about a child living in an irregular situation in the city. The description corresponds exactly to the girl you have been helping." "What kind of irregular situation?" Richard asked, although he suspected the answer. "Suspected identity falsification, possible parental kidnapping, and negligence in the official registration of the minor," Stella read from her documents. "The complaint alleges that the woman who poses as the child's mother has no legal rights over her." Richard's stomach sank. Who made this complaint? It's anonymous, but it came with very specific information about the child's whereabouts, daily routine, and even recent photos, Stella said, showing some photographs that had clearly been taken without Maria and Lily's knowledge. Richard examined the photos and was shocked. They showed Lily leaving school, playing in the building's backyard, and even inside the apartment through the windows. Someone had been watching the family for weeks. "This is inadmissible," he said, controlling his anger. "Whoever did this is stalking a child." "I agree it's disturbing," Stella said, "but legally, I need to investigate. If the child was really illegally removed from an official institution, it's my duty to act. What if she wasn't? What if the woman who cares for her saved her from a situation of total abandonment?" Stella studied him carefully. "Do you know the complete story of this child?" Richard hesitated. Telling the truth could put Maria in legal trouble, but lying to a social worker would be worse. "I know the situation is complex. The child was found abandoned, and Maria took care of her when no one else did. So you confirm that there is no biological link between them?" "I confirm it, but there's a much more important bond: genuine love and dedicated care." Stella closed the folder and leaned back in her chair. "Mr. Sterling, I'll be honest with you. In 15 years working with vulnerable children, I've learned to distinguish between genuine care situations and problematic cases. I need to investigate out of legal obligation, but I hope to find a family that really loves this child. And if you find it, then I'll do everything in my power to protect her, even if it means working within the system to legalize a situation that's already working." Richard realized that Stella wasn't just a bureaucrat following protocols. There was something personal in her approach that suggested her own experience with similar situations. "Can I ask why this situation is important to you?" Stella hesitated before answering. "Because I was also a child who needed to be saved by someone who wasn't my biological relative. I know the difference between true love and convenience." That afternoon, Richard went to the apartment to warn Maria about the investigation. When he told her about Stella's visit and the photos, Maria panicked completely. "Someone was watching us?" Photographing Lily, Maria began to walk from one side to the other, visibly desperate. "We have to get out of here. We have to run again." "Maria, running will make everything worse. Stella seems to be someone we can trust." "You don't understand," Maria said, tears streaming down her face. "If they find out about Providence, about how I really found Lily, they'll say I kidnapped her. They'll arrest me and put her in a shelter." Lily, who had arrived from school during the conversation, noticed her mother's desperation. "Mommy, why are you crying? Does someone want to hurt me again?" "No one is going to hurt you," Richard said, kneeling at the girl's height. "We just have to talk to some people to explain how we are a family." "But we're already a family," Lily said with the innocent simplicity of a child. "You won't let anyone separate us, will you?" "Never," promised Richard, looking directly at Maria. "We'll face this together." The next day, Stella made her official visit to the apartment. Unlike what Maria expected, she didn't come with uniforms or intimidating authorities. She arrived alone, dressed casually, bringing only a notepad. "Hi, Lily," she said when the girl opened the door. "I'm Aunt Stella. I came to talk to you and your mom." Lily greeted her with children's natural curiosity. "Are you a friend of Uncle Richard?" "Something like that," Stella smiled. "Can I come in?" During the visit, Stella carefully observed the interaction between Maria and Lily. She saw the genuine care, the mutual affection, and especially how Lily behaved, a safe, loved, and clearly happy child. "Lily, can you tell me what your life is like here?" Stella asked. "It's very good," Lily responded excitedly. "I go to school, I have toys, and my mum reads me stories every night. And Uncle Richard sometimes takes me to get ice cream. And before living here, do you remember where you lived?" Lily became more serious. Before, I was lost and scared, but Mommy found me and taught me that I was important. Stella continued the interview for another hour, asking technical questions to Maria about education, health, and care for Lily. All the answers showed a dedicated mother who knew every detail of her daughter's life. "Can I talk to you in private?" Stella asked Maria. In the room, away from Lily's ears, Stella was direct. "I know you're not her biological mother. I know the situation started irregularly, but I also know that you love this child genuinely." Maria started to cry. "Please, don't take her away from me. She's all I have in life. I didn't come here to destroy a family," Stella said softly. "I came to protect a child, and from what I see, she's been protected by you for years. So what's going to happen now? Now we're going to work together to legalize this situation. I'm going to help you with the official adoption process, and Richard can help with the legal costs." Maria looked at Stella with hope for the first time in days. "You would do that?" "I would. But first, I need to know who made the complaint and why. Someone wants to cause problems for you, and that worries me." What none of them knew was that, at that very moment, the person responsible for the complaint was planning an even more drastic movement to separate Lily from her chosen family, and that the next few days would bring revelations that would connect all the events of the last few months in a way that would change everything forever. Chapter 11. In the week following Stella's visit, unexpected events began to unfold quickly. Mark called Richard on a Friday morning with information that would change the entire perspective of the case. "Mr. Sterling, I discovered something important about the complaint against Maria," Mark said, his voice laced with urgency. "I managed to trace the origin of the photos that were sent to social services." "How did you do that?" Richard asked, interrupting a meeting in his office. "Through the metadata of the digital images. They were taken with a specific cell phone registered in the name of Brenda Johnson." The revelation hit Richard like a lightning bolt. "The reporter? The same one who humiliated Lily on television?" "The same. And there's more. I found out that Brenda is being sued by another family in Portland, Maine, who were also humiliated by her in a report. The case is gaining national attention." "That explains a lot," Richard murmured, remembering what Lily had told him about Brenda being Maria's cousin. "She's trying to get revenge on the family." "It seems so. But Mr. Sterling, there's something even more disturbing. Brenda isn't acting alone." That afternoon, Richard shared the findings with Maria and Stella during a meeting at the apartment. When they learned that Brenda was behind the stalking, Maria was furious. "I knew it!" she exploded. "I knew my cousin wouldn't let this go. She's always been vengeful, even when we were children." "Why does she have so much anger towards you?" Stella asked. Maria sighed deeply. "Our grandmother, Mrs. Davis, left a small house in Providence when she passed away. Brenda thought the house should be hers because she had a better job, more money. But Grandma Davis left everything to me because she knew I was going through hard times." "And what happened to the house?" "I had to sell it to pay the debts of my ex-partner, the father Lily never had. Brenda was furious, said I had wasted the family inheritance. Since then, she's been looking for any opportunity to hurt me." Stella wrote everything down carefully. "And who else is helping her? Mark said she's not alone." "We discovered an interesting connection," Richard said. "Brenda has been doing reports on irregularities in children's shelters, reports that always end up diverting attention from real investigations." "Someone is paying her to cover up corruption?" Maria asked. "That's what it seems. And one of the institutions that she protected with reports was Thomas Riley's shelter." Stella raised her head sharply. "Thomas Riley? I know that name. For months I've been receiving complaints about irregularities at his shelter, but I've never been able to get concrete evidence." "What kind of irregularities?" Richard asked. "Misappropriation of donations, inadequate conditions for the children, and mainly children who disappear from the records without adequate explanation." The conversation was interrupted by Lily arriving from school, backpack on her back and a radiant smile on her face. "Mommy, Aunt Stella, Uncle Richard, guess what happened at school today?" "What was it, my little one?" Maria asked, quickly changing to a lighter tone. "The teacher said we're going to do a presentation about families. Can I talk about our family?" "Of course you can," Stella said, smiling at the girl. "And what a special family you have." After Lily went to play in the room, the adults resumed the serious conversation. Stella had made an important decision. "I'm going to officially investigate Thomas's shelter," she announced. "If he's involved in corruption and using Brenda to protect himself, that changes everything." "It's dangerous," Richard warned. "If they find out you're investigating—" "It's my job to protect children," Stella said firmly. "And if Thomas is harming children while using influence in the media to protect himself, I need to stop him." The next day, Stella began her discreet investigation at St. Patrick's Cathedral's shelter. She arrived posing as a potential donor, interested in learning about the social work developed there. Thomas greeted her with the same enthusiasm he had shown to Richard months before. "Our work is fundamental to the community," Thomas repeated his rehearsed phrases. "We take care of abandoned children, offering shelter and basic education." As Thomas spoke, Stella discreetly observed the conditions of the place. The children seemed well cared for superficially, but there were subtle signs that not everything was right. Clothes too simple for an institution that received regular donations, food apparently rationed, and mainly, too few children for the size of the space. "How many children do you currently serve?" Stella asked. "We have capacity for 20, but we currently care for only 12, Thomas replied. "And the other 8 vacancies?" "They are in the process of being filled. Sometimes the children are relocated to foster families." Stella noticed the hesitation in the response. During her experience, she had learned that shelters always struggled to get space for more children. They never had vacancies. "Can I meet some of the children?" she asked. "Of course, but they are in educational activities now. Maybe on a next visit." Another suspicious evasion. Stella decided to try a different approach. "I heard that you had an irregular situation a few months ago, a child who disappeared overnight?" Thomas's face changed completely. "Where did you hear that?" "I work with social services. This information circulates among professionals." "It was a misunderstanding," Thomas said quickly. "The child's mother came to pick her up, everything within the law. Even with the child leaving through a window during the early morning." Thomas paled. "How do you know about that?" "As I said, the information circulates, and now I'm interested in understanding why there was no official communication about the incident." That night, Thomas called Brenda in a panic. "We have a problem. A social worker is asking questions about that child you want me to keep away from the family." "What kind of questions?" Brenda asked. "About how she left here, about our records, about the other children. She knows things she shouldn't know." "Did you say anything?" "Of course not, but she's coming back, and if she starts investigating our record books—" "That can't happen," Brenda said firmly. "You know how much money is at stake here, and I need that child to be separated from Maria." "Why is this so important to you? Is it just a personal issue with your cousin?" Brenda hesitated before answering. "It's more complicated than that, Thomas. Much more complicated." "What do you mean?" "That child. There are people interested in finding her, people who would pay very well for information about where she is." Thomas's blood ran cold. "What kind of people?" "The kind who don't like questions," Brenda replied coldly. While this conversation was happening, Lily slept peacefully in her room, hugging the teddy bear that Richard had given her. She had no idea that sinister people were interested in finding her, nor that her adoptive mother and her protector were about to face a danger much greater than they imagined. In the living room, Maria organized the papers that Stella had requested to start the official adoption process, dreaming of the day when she would finally have legal documents that would confirm her as Lily's mother. What she didn't know was that these same papers were about to attract the exact attention of people who preferred that Lily remained lost forever. Chapter 12. On the following Monday, Stella returned to Thomas's shelter with a different strategy. This time she brought John Santos, an accountant specializing in auditing charitable institutions. They introduced themselves as an official inspection team from the City Hall, a technical lie that Stella justified as necessary to protect the children. "We need to examine the financial records of the last 2 years," John announced, showing documents that looked official. Thomas was visibly nervous. "We weren't expecting an audit. Our records are in organization." "That's okay," Stella said calmly. "We can wait while you organize. We will take the opportunity to talk to the children and check the conditions of the facilities." During the next 3 hours, what they discovered was shocking. The records showed substantial donations from various companies and individuals, but the conditions of the children did not match the amount of money that should be being invested in them. "Look at this," John whispered to Stella, pointing to a spreadsheet. "Last month, $15,000 were donated just in food, but the expense recorded with food was only $3,000. "And where did the other $12,000 go?" Stella asked. "According to the records, in administrative expenses and infrastructure improvements," John replied, making air quotes with his fingers. Meanwhile, Stella spoke individually with some children. What she heard confirmed her worst suspicions. The children received only 2 meals a day, not always adequate, and many of them mentioned little friends who left without clear explanation. "Where is Michael?" Stella asked an 8-year-old girl named Clara. "Uncle Thomas said he went to a new family, but Michael said he didn't want to go. He cried a lot before he left." "And when did that happen?" 2 weeks ago. A man in a suit came to pick him up at night. Michael was very scared." The account chilled Stella's blood. Transfers of children to adoptive families did not happen at night, nor without prior preparation of the child. When they confronted Thomas with the irregularities found, he went into total despair. "You don't understand," he said, sweating cold. "There are important people involved in this, people who can end the life of anyone who asks too many questions." "Which people?" Stella pressed. "I can't talk. But you're messing with something very dangerous." That night, Stella met with Richard and Maria to share her devastating findings. The apartment had the curtains closed as a precaution, and Lily was sleeping when they began the conversation. "What we found goes far beyond simple misappropriation of donations," Stella began, her voice grave. "There is evidence that children are being removed from the shelter irregularly." "Removed to where?" Maria asked, feeling a chill. "That's the part that scares me. None of the transfers were officially communicated to social services. It's as if these children simply disappear from the system." Richard got up and began to walk around the room. "Are you suggesting child trafficking?" "I'm suggesting that there is an organized network operating through the shelter and that Brenda is involved to keep the media away from the investigations." "My God," Maria murmured, "and Lily almost stayed there." "If Richard hadn't started paying for her care." "That's exactly what worries me," Stella said. "I think Brenda isn't just trying to get revenge on you. She may be trying to put Lily back in the system so that these people have access to her." The silence that followed was heavy and terrifying. The idea that Lily was being pursued by a criminal network completely changed the nature of the danger they faced. "What do we do now?" Richard asked. "First, we go to the police with the evidence we got. Second, you need to double the security. And third," Stella hesitated, "maybe it's time to consider leaving the city temporarily." "Run away again?" Maria was horrified. "Lily just settled in at school, made friends. How can I take her from all this again?" "Because the alternative may be much worse," Stella said directly. The next morning, they went to the Boston police station to file a formal complaint. Detective Evans listened attentively to the report and examined the evidence that Stella had collected. "This is very serious," he said, after analyzing the documents. "I will open an investigation immediately and request a search and seizure warrant for the shelter." "And our security?" Richard asked. "If these people find out that we reported—" "I will provide frequent police patrols in the area where you live. But you need to be extremely careful." When they returned home, they found something that chilled them with terror. The apartment door was ajar, and it was obvious that someone had entered there. "Stay here," ordered Richard, entering the apartment first. What they saw inside was a clear message: drawers overturned, papers scattered, but nothing taken. Whoever had broken into the place was looking for specific information. "Where's Lily?" Maria asked in panic, running to her daughter's room. "She's at school," Richard reminded her, "but we need to pick her up now." They ran to the school where Lily studied, but when they arrived there, they received the most terrifying news possible. Lily was not in class. According to the teacher, a woman who identified herself as her aunt had come to pick her up an hour before, saying it was a family emergency. "What did she look like?" Maria asked desperately. "Dark-haired, well-dressed, said you had sent her because you had an accident," explained the teacher. "Showed documents, and Lily seemed to recognize her." Maria broke down. "It was Brenda. She took my daughter." Richard immediately called the police, and within minutes there were patrol cars all over the city looking for Brenda and Lily. But it was as if they had completely disappeared. "We need to think," Stella said, trying to remain calm despite the evident despair. "Where would Brenda take Lily? Where would she feel safe?" "Her apartment is in downtown," Maria said through tears, "but she's too smart to take Lily there." It was then that Mark called with crucial information. "Mr. Sterling, I tracked Brenda's cell phone. The last signal was picked up on the road that leads to Providence. They're leaving the city." "Providence," Maria murmured. "She's taking Lily back to where it all started." "Why?" Richard asked. "Because there she has contacts. People who can make Lily disappear forever." At that moment, Maria made a decision that would change everything. "I know where she's going. There's a place in Providence where my grandmother used to take us when we were children. If Brenda wants to relive the past and take revenge on the inheritance, that's where she'll be." "Then let's go," Richard said, grabbing the car keys. "No," Maria said firmly. "I'm going alone. If she sees me with you or with the police, she can do something terrible to Lily. I need to get to her, as if it were just a family fight." "Maria, it's too dangerous," Stella protested. "Lily is my daughter," Maria said with a determination that none of them had seen before. "And I'm going to bring her back, no matter what I have to do." Meanwhile, 200 miles away, in an old house on the outskirts of Providence, Lily was sitting in a chair, confused and scared, while Brenda spoke on the phone with people the girl couldn't see. "Yes, she's here," Brenda was saying. "The child you were looking for, exactly like in the photos you sent years ago." On the other end of the line, a male voice replied, "Great job. We'll arrive there tomorrow morning to pick her up. And remember, after tomorrow this child never existed." Chapter 13. Maria arrived in Providence at dusk, driving Richard's borrowed car at full speed on the back roads. Her heart beat unevenly as she headed towards the old house of Grandma Davis, an abandoned colonial mansion on the outskirts of the city that had been the setting for so many childhood memories. Some happy, others painful. The property was exactly as she remembered. High walls covered with vegetation, rusty iron gate, and the main house with its colonial windows that were once blue but were now faded by time. It was the perfect place for someone who wanted to hide with a kidnapped child. Maria parked a few blocks away and walked to the house, keeping in the shadows. Through a side window, she could see light inside. Someone was definitely there. Her stomach churned when she recognized the silhouette of Brenda walking through the room. She approached more and could hear voices. Brenda was talking on the phone again, and her tone was anxious, almost desperate. "No, she can't stay here until tomorrow," Brenda was saying. "The family may have discovered where we are. You need to come pick her up tonight." The voice on the other end was inaudible to Maria, but Brenda's response chilled her with terror. "I don't care about your plans. If you don't come now, I'll have to solve this my way. And you know I have no scruples when it comes to my cousin." Maria felt a wave of panic. Brenda was clearly losing control of the situation, and that made everything even more dangerous for Lily. She needed to act fast, but how? If she entered by force, Brenda could hurt Lily. If she waited too long, these mysterious people could arrive first. It was then that she heard the voice she most wanted to hear in the world. "Aunt Brenda, when is my mummy coming to get me?" It was Lily, her small voice echoing through the old house. "Your mother isn't coming," Brenda replied coldly. "She abandoned you again, as she did before." "That's not true," Lily protested with all the strength that a 6-year-old can muster. "My mommy never abandons me. She always comes back." "Your mother isn't even your real mother," Brenda said cruelly. "She stole you from other people. You don't even remember your real family." Maria heard Lily start to cry, and all her hesitation disappeared. It didn't matter how dangerous it was. No one would talk like that to her daughter. She began to go around the house, looking for a way to enter without being detected. The house had a back door that led to an old kitchen. Maria tested the doorknob carefully and found that it was unlocked. She entered silently, moving through the shadows of the house she knew like the palm of her hand. Brenda and Lily were in the main room. Through the crack in the door, Maria could see her cousin pacing nervously while on the phone, and Lily sitting in an old armchair, hugging her knees and crying softly. Okay, Brenda was saying into the phone. "But if you get here and the situation is complicated, that's on you." "I did my part." When Brenda hung up, Maria decided it was time to act. She entered the room slowly, hands raised to show she wasn't armed. "Hi, Brenda," she said in a calm voice, though her heart was racing. Brenda turned sharply, her face paling as she saw her cousin. "How did you find me?" "Mom!" Lily cried, trying to run to Maria, but Brenda grabbed her arm. "Be quiet," Brenda ordered Lily, then turned to Maria. "You shouldn't have come here." "Let her go, Brenda," Maria said, taking a step forward. "This is between us. Lily has nothing to do with our family problems." "Has nothing to do with it?" Brenda laughed bitterly. "That child is the source of all my problems. Because of her, you became an internet celebrity, got a rich man to support you, and now you want to be treated like a heroine for saving an orphan." "I don't want any of that, Brenda. I just want to raise my daughter in peace." "Your daughter," Brenda exploded. "She's not even your daughter. You stole her. I saved her. I found her abandoned, sick, with no one in the world. I gave her love, care, a family. And I'm going to give her what she really deserves," Brenda said, holding Lily tighter, making the girl cry in pain. "A family that can pay what she's worth." It was then that Maria understood the terrible truth. "You're selling her. You're literally selling my daughter." "I'm correcting a mistake," Brenda replied. "There are people who have been looking for this child for years. Important people with a lot of money. They offered me an amount that will solve all my financial problems." "What people? What are you talking about?" Brenda hesitated, realizing she had said too much. "People who are interested in children with certain characteristics." The horror of the realization hit Maria like an avalanche. "My God, Brenda, you know where you're sending her. You know what these people do to children." "Not my problem," Brenda said, but her voice trembled. "I just need the money." "Mom, help me," Lily cried, reaching out to Maria. "I'll help you, sweetheart," Maria promised, taking another step towards them. "Brenda, you can still stop this. You can still do the right thing." "It's too late," Brenda said, backing away with Lily. "They're already coming. They'll be here in an hour." "Then let's go now," Maria said desperately. "You, me, and Lily. We can leave the city, start over somewhere else. I'll help you with your financial problems." "With what money? You have nothing. Richard does. He can help you too, if you let Lily go. Brenda stopped, considering the proposal. For a moment, Maria thought she had gotten through to her. But then the headlights of a car illuminated the windows of the house, and the sound of doors slamming echoed outside. "They're here," Brenda whispered, terror now evident in her voice. "Who's here?" Maria asked, though she dreaded the answer. "The people who are going to take her." Heavy footsteps approached the front door, and a man's voice shouted, "Brenda, open the door!" Maria looked at Lily, who was terrified, then at Brenda, who had clearly lost control of the situation. In a few seconds, dangerous people would enter that house, and then it would be too late to save her daughter. "Brenda," she said one last time, "you can still choose to do the right thing. You can still choose to protect an innocent child instead of handing her over to monsters." The footsteps stopped at the door, and someone began to bang hard. "Brenda, don't make us break down this door!" Brenda looked at Maria, then at Lily, and finally at the door where the strangers waited. Her hands trembled and tears began to stream down her face. I can't stop it anymore," she murmured. "They'll kill me if I don't hand over the child." "Then let's run away together," Maria insisted, "through the back window, now." But before any of them could move, the front door burst open and 3 men entered the house. What happened next would change everything forever, in a way none of them could have predicted. Chapter 14. The 3 men who entered the house were exactly the kind of people that haunted every mother's nightmares. Dressed discreetly but expensively, with cold, calculating eyes, they scanned the room like predators assessing their prey. The leader, a tall man in his 50s, addressed Brenda directly. "You delayed our operation," he said in a grave and threatening voice. "That caused us problems. I couldn't risk it," Brenda stammered, clearly terrified. "Her family found out where we were." The man looked at Maria with disdain. "And who is this? The woman who was taking care of the child," Brenda replied quickly. "She won't cause any problems." "Of course not," the man said, signaling to one of his companions, who began to approach Maria. It was at that moment that something extraordinary happened. Lily, who had remained quiet until then, suddenly broke free from Brenda's arm and ran towards Maria, crying out, "Mom!" "Don't let them take me." The girl's cry echoed through the old house and, more importantly, was heard outside. Because Maria hadn't come to Providence alone, she had just arrived first. Richard, Stella, and a team from the police department had followed close behind, tracking Brenda's cell phone through Mark. "Police! Everyone on the ground!" Detective Evans's voice cut through the air like thunder, followed by the sound of several people entering through the back door and windows. Chaos erupted in the room. The 3 criminals tried to resist, but were quickly overpowered by the police team. Brenda collapsed into a chair, crying uncontrollably. And in the midst of all this, Maria hugged Lily with all her might, whispering words of comfort in the terrified girl's ear. "It's over, sweetheart," she repeated. "Mommy is here. No one will hurt you ever again." Richard rushed into the room, and seeing Maria and Lily embracing and safe, felt his legs weaken with relief. He approached them and wrapped them in a protective hug. "Are you okay? Is anyone hurt?" he asked, examining them for injuries. "We're okay," Maria said, tears of relief streaming down her face. "You got here just in time." During the following hours, as the criminals were taken into custody and Brenda gave her statement, the complete truth finally came to light. And it was a truth more shocking than any of them had imagined. Stella, who had accompanied the operation, discovered crucial information during the interrogations. The men arrested were part of an international child trafficking network that had been operating for decades, using shelters and seemingly legitimate institutions as a front. But the most devastating revelation came from Brenda during her testimony. When confronted about how she knew about the existence of this criminal network, she made a confession that changed everything. "Lily isn't just any child that Maria found abandoned," Brenda said between sobs. "She is. She is the daughter of a 15-year-old who died in childbirth 2 years ago, a girl who was held captive by this same network. The silence in the interrogation room was deafening. Stella was the first to speak. "You're saying Lily was born in captivity?" Her mother was one of the victims of this network. When they found out she was pregnant, they kept her alive only for the birth. Then they wanted to sell the baby too, Brenda continued, her voice breaking. But the child managed to escape during a transport between cities. That's when Maria found her. "How do you know all this?" Detective Evans asked. "Because I was investigating this network for a series of reports that would change my career," Brenda confessed. "But when I found out how much money was involved, when they offered me an amount to forget everything I had discovered, I accepted. And when you saw Lily on television, you recognized her?" "I recognized her by her eyes. Her mother had the same unique blue eyes, and I knew the network was still looking for her." The third and biggest twist of the story was being revealed. Lily was not just an abandoned child that Maria had saved. She was a survivor of a human trafficking network, and her very existence was evidence of horrific crimes that these people wanted to hide forever. "That's why they wanted so much to find her," Stella murmured. "She's a living witness to their crimes." "What now?" Richard asked. "What happens to Lily?" It was then that news arrived that none of them expected. One of the arrested criminals, trying to negotiate a reduced sentence, revealed information about other victims of the network, including distant relatives of Lily who had been reported missing years before. "There is an aunt of Lily's biological mother who is still alive," the detective announced. "Jane Doe, sister of the child's grandmother. She lives in Portland, Maine, and has never stopped looking for her missing family." Maria's heart broke. After everything they had been through, after all the love and dedication, Lily had living biological family who were looking for her. 3 days later, in the house in Portland, Maine, where they had temporarily taken refuge, Maria prepared for the most difficult conversation of her life. Lily was playing in the yard when she called her inside. "Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something very important," Maria said, sitting next to her daughter on the couch. "Is it about the bad men who wanted to take me?" Lily asked. "No, honey. It's about your family." "Your blood family?" Maria explained carefully, in a way suitable for a 6-year-old, about the Aunt Jane who had been found and wanted to meet her. She explained that this lady had lost her family a long time ago, and was very happy to know that Lily was alive and safe. "But I already have a family," Lily said simply. "I have you, Uncle Richard, and Aunt Stella." "I know, sweetheart, and that will never change. But this lady is also your family, and she has the right to meet you." "What if she wants me to live with her?" Maria took a deep breath. "If it's the best thing for you, maybe." "No," Lily interrupted. "I don't want to live with her. I want to stay with you." At that moment, Richard entered the room. He had spent the last few days talking to lawyers, social workers, and authorities, trying to find the best solution for everyone. "Lily," he said, crouching down to her level, "what if I told you that maybe you don't have to choose between families? What if we could find a way for you to have all the family that loves you?" "How?" "Aunt Jane really wants to meet you, but she understands that you already have a family that loves you. She wants to be part of our family too, not take you away from us." During the following weeks, a new family dynamic was carefully built. Jane Doe, a 65-year-old lady who had spent decades looking for her lost family, traveled to Massachusetts to meet Lily. The meeting was emotional and careful, mediated by specialized psychologists. "You have my niece's eyes," Jane said the first time she saw Lily, tears streaming down her face. "She would be your biological mother, a sweet girl who was taken when she was only 14 years old." "And now she's not here anymore?" Lily asked. "No, sweetheart, but you are. And you are the miracle I have waited so long for." The legal process that followed was complex, but had an ending that surprised everyone with its humanity. Jane, Maria, and Richard filed a joint petition for shared custody, officially creating an extended family where Lily would be loved and protected by multiple generations. 6 months later, during the seafood festival in Boston, Lily ran along the docks next to her grandmother Jane, while Maria and Richard organized the family picnic. Stella, who had become a constant presence in their lives, helped prepare the food. "Mum," Lily said, running to Maria, "can I tell you a secret?" "Sure, sweetheart." "I always knew you weren't my tummy mummy," Lily said, surprising Maria, "but you're my heart mummy. And that's more important." "How did you know?" "Because you chose me," Lily said simply, "and I chose you too." At that moment, watching her daughter play with her biological grandmother while Richard and Stella laughed at some joke, Maria understood that sometimes the truest families are those we build through conscious choices of love, protection, and dedication. The criminal network was dismantled. Brenda was convicted, but received a reduced sentence for her cooperation, and Thomas was arrested for corruption and complicity. But more important than any legal justice was the emotional justice. A girl who had been born in the midst of horror found a family that loved her unconditionally. Lily grew up knowing the whole truth about her origin, but also knowing that she'd been saved not once, but several times. First by Maria, who found her and chose to love her, then by Richard, who chose to protect them, by Stella, who chose to fight for them, and finally by Jane, who chose to expand the concept of family instead of trying to restrict it. Years later, when Lily became an adult, she would look back and see not a story of abandonment and trauma, but a story about how true love can create family where it did not exist before, and how the courage of some people can transform horror into hope, loneliness into belonging, and despair into unconditional love.